Dog soldiers? Well, they may not be dogs, but they are certainly soldiers. What's up, film freaks? I'm Clayton. Welcome back to my movie review channel. And today, we're reviewing Dog Soldiers, son. So fasten your seatbelts, get ready for a ride, because we're kicking it. Dog Soldiers, released in 2002, written and directed by Neil Marshall. Good film. We're in Vampire Werewolf Week. This is our next werewolf movie that we're reviewing during our Halloween season for October. Which brings me to a couple announcements I want to just say before we dive into this review. What's going to be coming up in November for you guys, for all you freaks. We're going to be doing 4 different ranking videos in November. I'm going to be doing one top 10 ranking video per week in November. So there's going to be 4 top 10 videos. The first one is going to be top 10 Tom Hanks films. Second week, we're going to be doing top 10 John Carpenter films. Third week is going to be a special week where we're going to be doing my top 10 favorite Western films with Brian Lomax from Brian Lomax Movie Talk. If you haven't checked out his awesome channel, do so. Go give him a like and a subscribe. Let him know that Clayton sent you. And then the last week of November, I'm doing my top 10 favorite Batman comics. So we're going to go a little off script for that last one. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge Batman fan, huge Batman fanboy. So I thought it'd be different, do something a little bit different, go off script, and instead of films, do my top 10 favorite Batman comics. So that will be coming up in November. Got a collab with Brian Lomax, and then we're going to be doing top 10 John Carpenter and a top 10 Tom Hanks films. So there will be other reviews as well that month that I will be dropping, but those are going to be kind of the big special editions for November. So stay tuned. If you haven't already subscribed, please go ahead and do so. It helps my channel out a lot. And that being said, let's get right into reviewing Dog Soldiers. Guys, I'm just gonna say, if you watched my American Werewolf in London review, you know that in that review I had stated that film was my favorite werewolf film for a long time. For many years, that was my favorite werewolf film. But I also said that it has been topped. This is the film that topped it. So if you're wondering what my favorite werewolf movie is, it's this bad boy. Dog Soldiers is my favorite werewolf film of all time. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time. And if you saw my American Werewolf in London review, you know that I gave that movie 5 stars. So if you can do the math and you know, do the logic, you can probably figure out if this is my favorite werewolf movie, that this one will also be 5 stars. But before we get there to the final rating, let's go ahead and talk about the positives. Obviously, with this being a 5-star film, there's not going to be any negatives really that I have with it. So it's going to be all positives in this review. I really love this movie, guys. I saw it for the first time years ago. And at the time I was just like, it was all right. You know, it had its moments, I guess. But over the years, every time I come back to this movie, I love it more and more. and it's now gotten to the point where I actually prefer it over American Werewolf in London, which may sound crazy to some people, but yeah, that's how much I've grown to love this movie. Part of it is also becoming a much better film analyst over the years than obviously when I was a kid, but also becoming a bigger werewolf fan and just fan of films in general, characters and acting. This is the top, the tip of the spear for me as far as werewolf movies are concerned. It's a great film. It's a great werewolf film. It's a great horror film. It's a great character film. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's a masterpiece. I definitely think it's Neil Marshall's best film as well. And I think he nailed it when he did this one. Nailed it. So, I mean, there's so many positives to talk about. I'm not really sure where to begin. So I'll just start with the characters in this film. If you haven't seen it, there will be some spoilers, but it's a group of British soldiers that are on a training mission. They're doing a training protocol, training operation, and during their training in the woods in the UK, they come across a special forces officer. Officer Ryan, who had been very severely wounded and attacked by a werewolf. They help him, they treat him, and then as they're trying to get him medical help, they are then attacked by werewolves. And they essentially have to flee. They come across this girl, Megan, who kind of helps them out, puts them in the back of her Humvee and takes them to this lodge, this cabin out in the woods where they kind of hold up and essentially are trying to fight off the werewolves all night long and trying to figure out what they're going to do, how are they going to get communications to the rest of their platoon. It's a really fun film. It's super entertaining. I think Neil Marshall does a really good job with the pacing in this movie. It's pasted really well. It goes by pretty fast. It's about an hour and 40 minutes, but it doesn't feel like an hour and 40 because it moves along at a really good pace and a really good rate. So I think Neil Marshall does a really good job pacing this film well. But the characters that you go on this journey with along the way, they're such likable characters. They're such a likable group of British soldiers that you're hanging out with, and you're seeing their personalities, and you're kind of getting to know them, and they're really likable characters. You can tell that they have good chemistry with each other. They're joking around, and if you've been in the military, if you're a military guy like myself, you kind of laugh at some of their teasing or joking that they give to with one another throughout this film, because it's very real and it's very accurate to how a lot of times a lot of soldiers joke with each other. You're a group of men and you're out in the woods together, and you're around these dudes all the time. So you kind of got to make light out of certain situations and just have some stupid, weird fun and jokes. So I find this film very amusing as well, understanding and getting some of the humor along the way. It's a British film. It's a totally British film, but it's a lot of fun. It's so entertaining all the way through. I love these characters. Spoon and Joe and Terry and Cooper. Cooper's kind of like the main soldier that we're following, him and Sergeant Wells, played by Sean Pertwee. He is my favorite character in this film. I know a lot of people like Cooper. Cooper is a really good character and a really good guy, but I personally love Sergeant Wells. He is just such a likable and entertaining character. He's a bad A, but he's also, you can tell he's got a heart, and he cares about his men, and he's got courage and the integrity to do the right thing. At the end of this film, when he turns and he becomes a werewolf, he takes himself out. He makes the sacrifice play and says, you know what? I'm not going to let these monsters win. And he kills the rest of the werewolves, takes them out with himself. It blows up the cabin with himself inside in order to save Cooper, who's the last surviving member of this military unit. Everyone else gets picked off by the werewolves throughout the night. And so it comes down to just Cooper and Sergeant Wells. And Sergeant Wells, he had been bitten earlier on in the film, so he knows he's going to be turning. And as he starts turning for the first time, that's when he makes a sacrifice play. He acts as a diversion, as a distraction for the werewolf so that Cooper can get away. And then he takes himself out. And it's a beautiful moment. It really is. This is a film that, yes, it's a horror film, but it's a horror film that has a lot of heart to it. It's humorous at times. It's so incredibly entertaining all the way through. It's scary at times. There are some really genuine good horror moments in this film. There's some good action throughout the movie, and then it's got a real heart and real emotion to it at the end when you see Sergeant Wells make that sacrifice play, take one for the team, and sacrifice himself in order to save his guy Cooper. And that's the sign of a true leader. That's the sign of what it means to be a soldier and to be, a leader of a military unit. So yeah, I love Sergeant Wells. I think Pertwee plays that character brilliantly. He brings this charm, this humor, but also, like I said, this emotion to that character that just, it's so engaging. Every time I watch this movie, I'm so in to what he's doing. I'm so in tune to what he's doing. I love that character. But Cooper, played by Kevin McKidd, he's also a great character. He's probably most people's favorite character in this film, and understandably so. He's a very well written character, and very heroic as well. And he's a guy with principle, a guy with with standards, and that's. You're when you're introduced to him in the beginning, when he's training to be a special forces soldier, there's this scene where the SF Officer Ryan asks him to shoot this dog as part of his training. They want to see if he's willing to just shoot this dog, this canine. And Cooper says no, he's not going to do it. He's not going to kill the dog. And Sergeant Ryan kind of asks him, he says, are you going to disobey a direct order? You don't have the spine to kill a dog. And Cooper says, it's not that I don't have the spine to kill a dog, I'm just not going to kill that dog for no reason. And you see a standard for Cooper. You see that this guy has values, he has standards, he has principles. He's not just going to kill a dog for no reason. And it's just in that moment that's early on in the film, the beginning of the film, and they set that character up very well, and it allowed you to invest in that character of Cooper now, and for you to get behind him and like him. Because quite frankly, in a lot of horror films, like the lead protagonist, you don't really have a reason to like him. until you learn something about him later on in the film that may be likable. But in the beginning, a lot of times you may not have a reason to like the main protagonist in horror films. But Dog Soldiers sets up their main protagonist, Cooper, in the beginning of the film, giving you reasons to like him. He's a guy with values. He's a guy with principles. He's a guy with standards. Now, we can debate back and forth whether or not that was the right call to not shoot the dog, because from the opposite perspective, and again, insight as someone being in the military, going through military training, I can also understand the reasoning there. I think Neil Marshall does a really good job presenting both perspectives, because from Officer Ryan's perspective, if you don't have the spine to kill this dog, how do we know that you're going to have the spine to kill the enemy? If the enemy is a woman, if the enemy is a kid, how do we know that you're going to have the spine to do what needs to be done in those situations if we can't see that you have the spine to do what's right against an animal? So I think you do kind of see both perspectives. And those are a lot of philosophical and deep moral discussions that are had in the military that have to be addressed. And it's just one of those things you have to know what you're signing up for when you join. But I think this film just it's a great character driven film. The characters in this film are just so engaging, so likable. And so there's not a bad character and throughout the film. Even Officer Ryan, who becomes this kind of the antagonist of the film, I guess, in a sense, even he is, I think he's played really well by Liam Cunningham. I think does a really good job playing Ryan. He's believable. I buy into him being a military, a special forces officer, and he's very believable in that role. He can be very intense at times, but also very just kind of cold and stale. I think he does a good job, and he's entertaining. He's good at making you hate him, and he's good at making you not like him. So good acting. The acting is a positive. I think everyone plays their role well. They know what film they're doing. They all bring a certain charm to their characters that's engaging. I think the story, this is a horror film that I think does have something to say philosophically about choices that have to be made in the military, about the brotherhood and the camaraderie of military platoons, guys and girls, and has something to say about sacrifice and having the courage to do what is right in order to save your friends, your brothers, your platoon. And so it's not, and as I've said in prior reviews, the best horror films are the ones that actually have something to say, actually have something to offer me in its storytelling. This does have that. It's a brilliantly and a beautiful told story, and it has really good storytelling in it. The script itself, I think, is well written. There's no plot holes here. Everything is concise, coherent, consistent. I think the look of the werewolves are incredible. These are some of my favorite looking werewolves. They're just these beastly creatures, man. These huge, bulking, beastly creatures that are just terrifying, man. They're savages. They just tear things to shreds, man. Human shredders. That's what these things are. And it's a graphic film. That's another thing that I love is you see the graphicness of werewolves, and how one of the most frightening things about werewolves is the fact they rip you apart while you're still alive. They don't. It's not just the one shot where they just kill you instantly, painlessly, and you don't live to suffer or anything. No, they literally tear you apart while you're alive, and there's a lot of that. Some really good kills in this movie. A lot of high body count, high RIP in this movie, and some really good werewolf scenes. So yeah, I like the look of the werewolves. I like the kills. I like the score here. I think is a really good score that's effective and works for this film. Some of the cinematography looks really good. Some of the POV shots from the werewolves when they're kind of stalking and hunting the men in the cabin. You see their night vision, how it's dark outside, but to the werewolves they see clearly with their night vision. It's just there's some great stuff in it. The cinematography, the score, some of the sounds. Just a brilliant film. Great storytelling, great dialogue, great character writing. It checks all the boxes. It really does. Writing, directing, the acting, the performances, the werewolf stuff in there. Everything is there. Everything that I want in a werewolf movie is there. And it's just so darn entertaining at the end of the day. It's just so entertaining, such a fun ride. And I think what ultimately tips the scale and puts this over American Werewolf in London for me is the emotion, the heart that this film has, that American Werewolf in London, it kind of has it, but not as much and not as clear as Dog Soldiers does. So yeah, I think for me, I can have fun. I can get all the emotions I want out of a werewolf film and have that emotional punch at the end where you also feel something for these characters along the way. And at the end, when Sergeant Wells makes that sacrifice play to save Hooper, you feel that as well. So yeah, great film, guys. Obviously, this is a 5-star masterpiece for me. It's, subjectively speaking, a perfect film. I love it. Favorite werewolf movie of all time. There's nothing in this. I don't have any negatives with Dog Soldiers. I really don't. There's nothing in here that bothers me. And I love it. So one of my favorite horror films, favorite werewolf film. If you haven't seen it, get on it. You can actually watch it for free on YouTube. So maybe after this, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Dog Soldiers. What do y'all think? Do y'all agree with my rating? If you've seen this movie, do you agree? Is this your favorite werewolf movie? What is your favorite werewolf movie? Let me know in the comment section. Also, stay tuned. We got one more vampire movie coming up before we end our werewolf and vampire week. Next week, we're gonna do more modern horror films. So we're gonna look at horror films within the past decade. So what I'm going to do is just make it of the 2010s. So horror films of the 2010s are going to be next week's horror week. So if you have a certain horror film that has come out in the 2010s, released in the past 10 years, drop it in the comment section if you want me to review it. So I can slot it in. I have a couple already in there, but I can take a couple of requests. So if there's one in particular you want me to do, let me know in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, until next time, kick it and rock on.